Welcome explorers today. Dive into this thrilling TTP narration of Ghosts in the Avalanche by Banancake, an ongoing fan-made book from the Nature of Predators series by Spacepaladin15 on r/HFY.
Memory transcription subject, Vickery, the honey badger. Date, standardized human time May 17, 2137. Chapter 6 Veteran. My alarm blared in my ears as I lay on my bed, eyes wide open. I'd watched the sunrise, its golden light traveling up my window one space in the blinds at a time. I took a deep breath and sat up, shutting off my alarm and putting on my watch. I sat on the side of the bed for a moment, blankly staring at the floor. I'd tried everything. Every little trick I could find on the web, the rest of the whiskey, I even tried the tea Hugh showed me how to make. I couldn't sleep, and I was beginning to get desperate. I felt horrible. My brain seemed to function in slow motion. My eyes ached as I rubbed them and stood up, wobbling slightly. I could safely rule out that I wasn't sleeping because I was afraid of nightmares. I'd have gladly had the worst nightmare of my entire life if it meant I could finally get some rest. The night before wasn't much better. I got minutes at the most. I sauntered to the door and threw it open. As I walked through the threshold, I saw Vickery in the kitchen trying to cut something with a knife. I rubbed my eyes as I moved toward her. "Oh, Vickery, you mind helping me out here?" I opened my eyes. With what, I looked at the counter to see that she was attempting to cut open a pineapple with a knife that was not meant to do that. She was about to destroy the whole thing. "Use a bigger knife," I muttered. "Use what?" I shuffled past her and drew a large knife out of its holder. The blade came out with a silvery grinding sound. I walked over and chopped the top of the pineapple off. Vickery yelped as pineapple juice splattered on her. I looked at her with tired eyes. A bigger knife. I flipped the blade over in my paw and extended the handle toward her. "Oh." Vickery stuttered as she nervously took the large knife. You look pretty tired." "I am. I didn't sleep at all last night. I gotta get something to help me, and I don't mean tea." Vickery cut the pineapple in half and began cutting out small slices. "Well, I don't think they'd have anything made for Venmo around here. You gotta see somebody, maybe they can get something shipped in from home." She threw a small piece of pineapple into her mouth and chewed. "This isn't bad." "Yeah, did you plan on eating that entire thing?" "I was gonna share," she assured me. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. I scratched the side of my face as I lazily walked down the hallway. I opened the door to see Andy standing on the steps. "Vickery." She smiled wide as she looked up at me before that smile quickly faded away. "You look awful. You feeling okay?" I sighed, slightly annoyed that she could tell just by looking at me. "I didn't sleep last night." "Oh, well, I was gonna ask if you and Vickery wanted to get away from this place for a while and see the sights, go, do something, but you should probably." "Sounds good." I interrupted, grabbing my poncho from the rack next to the door. "Are you sure? You should probably go back to bed." "I'll be fine. Going back to bed won't do me much good, but getting out and having a little fun might." Vickery ran up behind me in the hallway. "Hi Andy," she shouted gleefully. "Hi Vivi." Andy waved back. I snickered as I put my head through the poncho. "You two seem to be making friends quickly. We're practically besties." Andy giggled. "You're sure about this?" she asked once more. "I'm sure. I'll be alright, I've seen worse." Andy put her hands on her hips and looked at me for a moment. Well, alright, let's hit the road, we should be back before sundown." We stepped out of Andy's car into the midday heat. She'd insisted on keeping our destination a surprise. I took in a breath and looked around. We were in a small town not too far from the farm, and there seemed to be a lot of humans out and about today. The building we were headed toward was particularly rowdy. The sun beat down on me as I stretched and shielded my eyes, peering up at the building in front of me. My poncho fluttered in the cool breeze as my eyes adjusted. This was a bar. Andy brought us to a bar. In the middle of the day. Perplexed, I studied the interior through the large windows in the building's dark, wooden walls. The place was full of humans, and the parking lot was no exception. Humans of all ages roamed about between the building and wooden tables and benches set up outside. A huge grill was lit up nearby, billowing out white smoke as a group of humans seared meat over the flames. The entire atmosphere was cheerful and lively. Vivri shuffled up next to me. Are they, you know? Yes, I said plainly. You're going to see that a lot here if you plan on going anywhere outside the farm. Or even at the farm. I looked up at Andy. So, what's going on exactly? This is my dad's bar. She announced. This is the annual Veterans Grill. She leaned over and placed a hand on my shoulder. Which means you eat free. And drink free, if you want. I'm your driver. Just don't overdo it, she snickered. I don't need hammered Venlil vomit in my car. You've come close already. I squinted at her before looking around again. Scattered all over the place, I could see men and women dressed in camouflage military attire, some with their families, others in large groups with their comrades as they held plates loaded down with food. Several of them were already looking my way and whispering in each other's ears. Oh, your dad owns this place. Yup. Been in business for 20 years, we've done this for 10. Andy clapped her hands together. Well, why are we still standing around? Let's go. She gestured for us to follow as she walked ahead. Vivri nervously shuffled forward before I grabbed her by the shoulder. Wait a second. What is it? I could use your help laying low. I leaned in closer. How would you like to get all the free watermelons you want? An hour or so passed, and my plan seemed to be going perfectly. Badger. 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 I watched as Vivri was suddenly lifted into the air by a group of soldiers, wearing my poncho. I laughed as she steadied herself and lifted a piece of watermelon into the air. Watermelon, she shouted. The group cheered as they set her back down, completely oblivious. Over the day, a few people approached me, asking me where I was from. Vivri and I were the only two Venlil there, possibly the only two Venlil some of these people had ever seen in the flesh. After so many questions from so many people, I sought out a secluded spot to enjoy my grilled corn and watch from afar. Vivri seemed to enjoy being me. A lot more than I did. I was startled slightly as a figure appeared in the corner of my vision from behind me. It was a small human boy, seemingly no older than 10. He stood in front of me and asked, "Are you a Venlil?" plainly and with no hesitation. Yes. I fidgeted with my bandaged paw. The kid looked down at it. Are you hurt? Oh, this is just a few little cuts. It's fine. The boy seemed to inspect my entire being before looking me in the eyes. I've never seen a real Venlil before. I love your fur. He announced cheerfully. I was slightly caught off guard by how comfortable he seemed. Thank you. I chuckled. Can I feel it? He asked enthusiastically, pulling his hands to his chest and bouncing slightly. Who is this kid? Yeah, I guess so. I said hesitantly as I extended my arm toward him. The strange boy gently grabbed my wrist and felt the fur on my forearm with his other hand. I thought it would feel more like dog fur, but it's way thicker. Yeah, keeps us nice and warm. I studied the child's face. I could see remnants of what I hoped was ketchup around the edges of his mouth. He studied my arm as though it contained buried secrets of an ancient civilization. He seemed utterly unafraid. Most human cubs were more cautious around strangers in my limited experience. He continued with the questions. So you don't have a nose? No. Venlil don't smell. Well, how do you know if you smell bad? I sat up slightly, turning one eye toward him. Do I smell bad? No. Well, there you go, that's how I know. The boy giggled. You're funny. I chuckled with him, swallowing a bite of corn. I can be. What's your name? Where are your parents? I'm Carter. My parents are over there, they said I could talk to you. He pointed behind him to a pair of humans sitting at a table. They would occasionally glance in our direction and grin. I breathed a small sigh of relief. Okay, great. Did you just want to ask me questions? Carter put his hands behind his back and looked up at me. I guess you just seemed kinda sad. I slouched slightly and looked at him for a moment. And what made you think that? I don't know, you were sitting all by yourself. I don't like sitting by myself. And your ears were hanging down. My dog's ears hang down when he's sad. I stared at him for a moment, one ear raised. Carter giggled. My dog does that when he's confused. I laughed, shaking my head. You're pretty smart, Carter. I sighed and looked down. But yeah, I guess I am kinda sad. Are you a veteran? Carter asked without pause. I looked up at him, slightly perplexed. Yeah. What did you do? I was a starship engineer. So you worked in space? Carter asked excitedly. Yeah, all the time. Wait there. Carter took off without another word into the crowd. I watched as he slipped between wandering humans and ran up to the table where his parents were sitting. He opened a bag, pulled out what looked to be a small envelope, and scurried back toward me. He smiled as he extended the envelope toward me with both hands. Here. I gently took it from his grasp. What's this? Carter placed his hands behind his back. I made it. Our whole class made drawings for the cookout. I looked down at the envelope and flipped it open with my claw. I reached inside and pulled out a folded piece of paper. On it was a crude drawing of a Venlil and a human joining hands over a drawing of Earth, continents and all. I snickered at the drawing of the Venlil, which was basically just a cotton ball with arms, legs, and massive ears. The whole thing was colored in with crayons. Earth was painted with vibrant blue and green, and the entire page was filled in with black to depict the backdrop of space. At the bottom, written in green, was, "Thank you for saving my home," standing out in front of the black filling. My heart seemed to freeze in place. My mind returned to full lucidity for just a few moments as I read those words. It was a simple, yet powerful reminder that everything I went through had a purpose. A good one. So kids like Carter would never experience something like the attack ever again. I felt an odd sense of relief. I clutched the paper tighter as a single tear fell onto the page. You like it? Carter asked, bringing me out of the trance. I quickly rubbed under my eyes. Yeah. It's really good. I love the colors. Carter seemed to pause. I'm glad, he said quietly. I looked back up at him. Thank you, Carter. You're welcome. Just don't be sad anymore, okay? I nodded and laughed lightly. Okay. Carter walked back into the ruckus and rejoined his parents. For a minute, I just kind of stared at the drawing. I pored over every detail before Andy's voice nearly sent me flying off of the bench. Vivi! She squealed. I flinched and folded the drawing up. Andy hurried over with a couple of other girls. You look bored, why don't we get your nails painted while the boys have their fun? She smiled. I leaned back. Oh, I am not. Girls, this is Vivri, my new fluffy friend. Say hi. Both of them smiled wide and waved. Oh my god, I've always wanted to see a Venlil for myself. You are so adorable. One of them chimed. Thanks, but I'm not. Come on now, don't be shy. Andy exclaimed. Andy, I'm not wah. Andy suddenly lifted me onto her back with uncanny ease. I clung to her shoulders for dear life, still clutching the folded paper in my paw. It's right down the road, we'll be back before anyone even notices we're missing. As Andy carried me away, I whispered in her ear. Andy, I'm not Viv, I'm Vic. A frighteningly mischievous smile crawled across Andy's face. I know, she giggled. I could tell by that little silver spot in your eye. Then why are you? Suddenly, reality hit me. I looked back to see Vivri sitting on a bench, surrounded by humans. She laughed hysterically as I was carried away for a makeover. I sighed and shook my head, laughing quietly. Fair enough, I mumbled. After I learned what was going on, I just played along with the whole thing. If Vivri was taking all the attention, it was only fair that she got some laughs out of it. Even if it was at my expense. I left the cookout looking the same way I had since I'd moved out here and came back looking, in the words of the lady at the salon, fabulous. They'd painted my claws a bright yellow. All of them. In meticulous detail. It was common practice among the Venlil to clean and trim our claws, limiting the risk of infection. I couldn't say I'd ever seen a Venlil with painted claws. I had a feeling, however, that it may have become a trend on Venlil Prime with the number of humans there now. Vivri studied my claws as I leaned against the car with her and Andy. The afternoon had come and gone, and the warm stillness of the evening was beginning to settle in. Vivri was noticeably less than sober. They're so pretty, she exclaimed in a breathy voice. Being you was fun and all, but I wish I could have gotten mine painted, she pouted. I can paint yours when we get back, Andy assured her. Vivri gasped. Really? Yeah. For sure. Vivri charged at Andy, wrapping her arms around her waist. Andy buckled slightly and laughed as Vivri pressed the side of her face into her shirt. You're the best, Andy. Andy laughed. I guess you're a cuddly drunk. Good to know. I'm not drunk. Andy placed a hand on her head. Yes you are, you goober, she giggled. I looked inside the bar through the large window in the front. A few of the humans inside who dared to challenge a Venlil to a drinking game were being helped out of the door by their sober companions. Things were finally beginning to wind down. Andy clapped her hands together while Viv was still latched around her waist. Welp, you two ready to head back? I stretched. Yeah, I think so. Andy opened the rear door of the car and helped Vivri inside. Alright, little sis. You should probably take a nap. Okay, I guess, she sighed as Andy strapped her in. Andy stood up. You should too. At least try, I guess. If that doesn't stop happening, you should probably see someone. I don't know much about Venlil biology, but I'm pretty sure nothing good will come of not sleeping. I opened the passenger door. Yeah. I guess I'll try. Just no crazy driving, alright? Promise, Andy assured me as she opened the driver's door and climbed inside. We eased out of the parking lot and onto the open road. After a few minutes, the sun started going down. Sparkling orange sunbeams shined through the trees as the sky began to darken. I looked behind me to see Vivri sprawled out over the back seat, fast asleep. I turned back around and looked down at the drawing in my paws one last time. I snickered as I noticed how much the glossy, yellow paint on my claws stood out from my dark fur. I read over that simple thank you one more time before my eyelids became heavier than bricks. The steady drone of the engine and the road beneath us brought a calm stillness to my mind. The side of my head rested against the window as my eyes closed completely. Finally.